Righty. I don't know why I decided to say it like that. Hi, everyone. We should be live. How is everyone doing? What is going on? How was your Friday? Happy Friday. The Bandita Cam is back. You guys were chatting up a storm before I got here. I just got done doing an interview for a magazine piece, which that's new for me. Actually, I've done one before, but not over the phone. I've done it over email before. So I just got done, and while I was doing that, I kept seeing out of the corner of my eye that there were chat messages happening, and I was like, what are y'all up to? What are y'all doing? Yes, here we go. Okay, top of the show. A very important news. Bandita. Bandalina. Hi, sweetie girl. Hello. Hi. The bandit camera is back, but I wanted to be very close because it was a very important day. Though not technically today. It was earlier this week. It was March 1st. It's this little girl's birthday. Everyone in the chat, say happy birthday. Say happy birthday to my dog. She turned 11. She's such a big girl. We love her so much. Yes, we do. We love her so much. We love her so much. Yes, we do. So sweet. Such a good girl. Being 11. My goodness. And you know what? She proved today how spry she is and how lively she is, because this afternoon she got out of the yard somehow. This happened once right after I first got her. She got out of the house that I used to live in then, which had a fenced yard, but the fence wasn't super great. And there was a section of the fence. It had been raining really hard for a couple of days. Thank you all so much for the Bandita birthday wishes. We love it. We love to see it. And she loves it. She appreciates it. Last night, she got a special dinner. She did. You got a special dinner. She got like a chicken, sweet potato, rice dinner. She loved it. It was her favorite. She's like, what is this? What's happening? What did I do to deserve this? And then when she, actually going back to my story, I was trying to tell. She got out of the yard when I very first got her. We'd had it for a couple of weeks, and it had been raining really hard outside, and there was a section of the fence that was kind of on the side of this hill that was like basically just dirt. And the sheer amount of rain had washed away enough dirt where over the last 2-3 days, there was enough of a gap underneath the bottom of the fence to where she could get out from underneath it. So she wiggled her way out from under the fence. She ran around chasing a squirrel, ended up in her neighbor's yard, and then the neighbor came and brought her home. And she looked like a sad little wet sewer rat. And it was so sad. You were covered in dirt. You were all muddy. You were so gross. But now you're fine. And then I don't know what happened. It's been really windy here for the last couple of days, and honestly last week with the snow and everything else. There's like a back gate fence on the yard here, and I guess it was slightly ajar, and the neighbors found her again and were like, knock knock knock, your dog was outside. But it was funny because by the time that they came to knock on my door, she was already back in the house. So she had escaped from the yard, she saw the neighbors, and then she ran back into the yard and into the house. So she was outside for she brought herself back home, which I think is so funny. But she got out today, so we are making sure the fence is secure. I don't know, the latches on it were really rusty, and so I don't know if maybe that contributed to it. And anyways, we're gonna have to get that fixed, which is fun. Oh my gosh, it's your birthday too. Happy birthday. Love it. All the March birthdays. What is that? Okay, if my doggo is born on March 1st, what does that mean her astrology sign is? What astrological sign is my dog? Am I compatible astrologically with my dog? That's what I want to know. I'm a Cancer, by the way. I was born July 5th, in case anyone was wondering. Anyways, Bandita birthday. Feliz cumpleaños. So sweet. And there's a big batch of special puppy dinner that you're probably going to be eating for the next couple of days, because it would be enough food for 2 meals for a large dog and enough food for you for like 10 meals as a small dog. So there we go. All right, Bandita. Goodbye. She's a Pisces. Oh my gosh. There's all water babies in this house. I love it. Everyone who lives here is like a Cancer or a Pisces or a Scorpio. I love it. We're just a house full of water. What are you What are you doing? What are you doing, dog? This is what I have to live with. This is what I have to live with. Anyways. All right, now everyone knows. Thank you for the birthday wishes. We love it. We love it. Happy birthday, Bandita. 11 big year. I know it is. I'm so happy that she is healthy and doing well. She's older than my kids combined. Wow. young children life. Yup. Yeah, I know, it's like 11. Like, I'm like, if she was a child, she would be going to middle school. Wild to think about. But she's not. She's a dog. What was the name of the sushi place in Capitol Hill that you mentioned last week? Oh, you're right. You're right. Oh my gosh. I'm going to look that up right now because that is an important question. Okay, give me a second here because I think that I still have it bookmarked. I think it's Momoji? I think it's Momoji Capitol Hill. I'm going to look at the pictures real quick. Because oh my god, there's 2,000 photos of this place on Google. That's maybe too many photos. Maybe we should just lock that up. Yeah, it's Momoji. It's Momigi, Momoji Capitol Hill. You can see there's pictures of the courtyard there. I had a very lovely date there once. It was really nice. The courtyard was very pretty. Anyways, now you know. Completely unrelated to anything else. I was just saying. All right. So thank you all so much for being here on this beautiful Friday. You can watch my dog groom herself down here. Just some baseline things for those new and returning. This is an 18+ only live stream. So at least 18. Please don't be here because we talk about adult subjects and we want to make sure that we were doing that in a safe and consensual manner, so please no minors here. There is an FAQ down below for frequently asked questions, so if you want to know things like how do I introduce my partner to kink, what's BDSM, that's mostly covered down below, though I do have discretion to answer questions that are covered in the FAQ if I feel like it, but there's tons of links to good resources and articles and books and everything else down below. And then also, if you could just read the rules, generally speaking, the main things are don't spam the chat, don't ask me what my address is, be careful if you are sharing your name and location on this stream because they are recorded and they do mostly tend to stay on my channel in perpetuity, so just be careful about that. And that's basically it. Oh, no medical information, no mental health advice. Other than just like telling you to go see a professional. That's basically about the extent of what I am qualified to talk about. All right. All that being said, let's go ahead and answer some questions. I do answer questions in the order that they are received in the chat. So if you want to make sure that I will answer your chat, you can use a super chat either through YouTube or you can go down to the description box and go through Streamlabs and it'll pop up your question or message on the screen and then it'll read it out loud. It's very exciting, very fun, and then I will answer it right away, but otherwise we go in the order of the chat. So y'all were chatting it up before this stream started, so let's make sure we didn't miss any questions. Now the reason for the title for today, which is unusual and extreme kinks, is that was the video that I just put out most recently in regards to like dealing with extreme kinks, and I thought because like what counts as extreme or unusual is kind of subjective, and people wanted to share any stories, any thoughts about extreme or unusual kinks, or like how they've done scenes with extreme kinks or unusual kinks. I would love to hear all of that. Any follow-up questions for the video as well, and then dom sub relationships. I guess, as well, just because I like to make sure that people know things they can ask about. But honestly, this is really y'all's FAQ. So if you want to ask me about, I don't know, brads and princesses and DDLG relationships instead, we can totally do that. This is very much a fan and chat created live stream. I mostly go by what y'all want to talk about, and then sometimes what I personally want to talk about. But we try to keep it up there. We try to make sure everyone feels like they are participating. I don't know why I said it like that. Yes, if you're lurking around, leave a like. We love the lurkers. We appreciate the lurkers in the chat. We also love people that are in the chat too. Everyone is a welcome fan. I don't know if that's the right word. Fan? Do y'all feel like fans? How do you guys want to label chat participants? We love them. It is subjective to a vanilla person. Just seeing a pair of handcuffs and cat ears would be extreme. I mean, I would have maybe in the past disagreed on that. Like, oh, vanilla people, don't forget about that. But like, these days, if you wear a short skirt, people freak out. So you know what? Maybe you're not too far off about that one, Dale. To be honest, we're pretty much the opposite of extreme as far as kink goes. We're like kinkily wholesome. Listen, I love kinkily wholesome. Y'all know when I do my little, was it Jeremy and like Bethany or whatever? When I do my like good Christian BDSM couple impression of the like, oh, we're just, we've been married for 10 years and we just really love each other. And, he came to me, he just said it was on his heart to tell me about how he was having some thoughts about how to enhance our marriage. And he thought it would be really fun if he could sometimes spank me in the bedroom. Oh, I know, it's too much. Like, I love doing that because it's so true. Oh. Oh, thank you.
Nothing better than happy, healthy, unconditional love and a big dinner.
Yes, that's so true. Thank you so much. That is absolutely true. She loves it. I don't know why she's decided to lay where she's laying currently. I don't know. I know we're talking about you, Smiley girl. We're talking about you. I know. Everyone loves you. I love you. So good. Oh, silly girl. And the good thing about having a dog on camera is if ever we get into like an intense question or subject, just look at the dog. And then it's like built-in aftercare in your live stream experience. I'm used to either writing overly flowery descriptions of fantasy scenes or overly flowery descriptions of sexual scenes. Haha. I mean, trust me, I know a thing or two about that. My video scripts get away from me sometimes, and I go, this should have been a 15-minute subject, but I made it into 40 minutes somehow, and how am I still writing it? It's 7 pages long, single-spaced, what? Absolutely a mood for sure. With a weekly live stream, do YouTubers have a weekend social life? Listen, don't call me out on that. I do. I just don't have Fridays. I honestly, no, to be real though, the reason why I started doing these streams on Fridays was because I used to have a job that wasn't just YouTube, and it would be something I could do like after work on Fridays, and then the weekends themselves, Saturday, Sunday, there would be events and parties and doing things with friends. And these days, it's one is just sort of like the pattern of my life that I've gotten into. But I feel like, at least for the BDSM community, like we don't tend to have a lot of like parties on Friday evenings. It tends to be a Saturday evening thing. I have had to move the stream around like occasionally. Like last night I had to move my Patreon stream to be earlier in the day because I had something in the evening on Thursday. I find that like educational stuff tends to be like Mondays and Thursdays, and then like Saturday, Sunday tends to be like parties for some reason. And I don't know why. And then munches tend to be like Tuesday, Wednesday, based on what I've observed. It's very interesting. But I do technically have a weekend social life, but not really much of one because I don't really have any friends where I live. So womp womp womp. I'm trying to make friends. I'm trying to meet people. I want to have friends in real life where I currently live, but you know, it just hasn't happened yet. I'm going to try and get out and like socialize more. That's like my goal for myself for this year is I want to meet more people, socialize more, try more different events. And like I've met people that I've gotten along with that I've been friendly with, but like go live with like fucking Eugene and shit. And it's like, I can't work with that. Like, you know, I want somebody that I can just randomly hang out with when I feel like it. And that is not happening currently. Thank you for the reminder to check the FAQ. It is a wonderful, helpful, amazing resource. We love it. Okay, good question. Johnny Prince Charlie. Is that a pun on Bonnie Prince Charlie? If so, love the reference. We love a little history reference. Have you any thoughts on unicorn hunting? Oh boy, do I, Johnny. My 19-year-old female friend is now in a polytriad. Oh, good lord. Every sentence of every line of this, every character makes this more worrying to me. My 19-year-old female friend is now in a polytriad MS dynamic with a 52-year-old man and a 53-year-old female couple. All right, so I will just say as a baseline, it is entirely possible, because your friend is an adult who can make adult choices for themselves, even when they're bad ones, that you can have a happy, healthy, mutually enjoyable relationship, even with a really big age gap, even in an MS relationship, even within a triad. However, because your friend is only 19 years old, that puts a maximum cap of how much possible previous poly and or BDSM experience they could have had, right? Even if they were doing BDSM as a teenager, they have what, maybe 3 years tops of experience, and mostly having to do it, hiding it from your parents and not being able to drive. So that's not always my favorite thing to hear. I always get really worried whenever I hear of like really young people getting into MS relationships, because there are some people for whom like MS is like the one true way of their life, and they will only ever be happy doing it, and finding it young just means they get to have a happier life earlier. But for a lot of people, especially when you're getting into BDSM for the first time, like you don't know about what to really expect, and this is absolutely jumping off of the deep end. You're not even jumping off into the deep end. You're jumping off into the open ocean when you're doing an MS polyamorous relationship with somebody who are people that are literally old enough to be your grandparents. Like that is advanced. So I guess to answer sort of the first question, which is my thoughts on unicorn hunting. So for people who don't know what unicorn hunting is, let's talk about that. So unicorn hunting is when you are wanting to pursue a polyamorous relationship, a relationship where there is consciously and on purpose more than two participants involved. And unicorn hunting is, I guess, in the broadest sense, when you are a couple looking to add a third to your relationship. And typically in the polyamorous community, we tend to make a distinction between like looking for a triad and unicorn hunting. So not all unicorn hunting is the same as like generally looking to have a triad, because you can look to have a triad relationship in a way that's like healthy and equitable, and it's going to make everyone involved like happy and feel, you know, loved and respected. Unicorn hunting gets termed that way because it typically looks like an older married couple opening up their relationship and then looking to like find a third to fix their marital problems, and to maybe have the woman explore like a bisexual fantasy that she's been having for a long time. And the reason this is kind of termed this way is because the third person is not really treated as a person. They're treated as like a means to an end, where who you really are and what your goals are don't really matter as much, because, oh, well, like you're just here to make our relationship happier and healthier. And there are people, I'm sure some people in my audience right now listening to this, that are in like happy, healthy triad dynamics, but it very rarely comes from this place of like, hi, we are Barbara and Stan, and we're 50 years old, and we're opening up our relationship because we retired early and we're bored, and we just want to have like a fun experience with a younger person, and then finding a fucking 19-year-old. Like, even if you were dating a 30-year-old, somebody who is 22 years older than you, that is still an age gap, but it would be like, why 19 of all, Jesus. Like, at some point, I think people fetishize the age of their partners, and I do find that to be slightly problematic, where it's like, oh, you want to do this because she's as young as possible for this to even be legal for you. Did we examine this? Did we think about it? So while there can be healthy triad dynamics, and looking for a triad on purpose can be done in a healthy way, unicorn hunting is that way because it's about like objectifying this third person to like fill a need in your relationship. Like, you're kind of your monogamous, right? And you're opening it up just enough for that third person to come in. But what about this tends to be bad is, like, again, it's the objectification element, yes, but it's also sort of like this person is treated as very expendable. They are treated as like, oh, well, like, our relationship this way is what matters, and you're kind of just like, if you don't fit with us, like, you get tossed out. Like, you are here for us. We are not here for you. We are not here for each other as a team, as a group. It's us and you're benefiting us, as opposed to it being a three-way thing where it's all more equitable. And also there tends to be a lot of issues with like jealousy and possessiveness, and like there ends up being a lot of like weird rule making around, oh, well, like, we can only all date each other together. When we hang out, we have to be in a group together. If you're going on a date with her, like, I have to come too, or like, you're not allowed to use this one cup. You have to use this, like, she's not allowed to sit in this one seat in the dining area. Like, it just ends up being really problematic. So, unicorn hunting, I'm not a big fan of. I think there is a healthier way to pursue a triad that's more open and honest, and is like, I think the way that it works, and the difference between like unicorn hunting and being in a triad, is you have to be willing to break apart the dyad dynamic, which is like the two-way, like these people right here, their relationship. You have to be willing to break apart this dyad as being the core relationship. You have to be willing to say, okay, like, we're going to be dating a third person, possibly together, in a triangle triad relationship, we're going to end up being like this. And in order to do that, we have to not be like this. We have to hinge apart from each other and stay hinged apart, where it's not just about us two and then what a third person can do for us. It's about what everyone can do for everyone else in the relationship. And we have to open up that space between the two of us for this third person in the relationship to grow and feel healthy and feel seen. And that can mean making a lot of sacrifices in terms of how you spend time together, working through jealousy, doing that hard emotional work. And I think the reason why kind of these closed unicorn hunting triad relationships appeal to people is because it's the way to be polyamorous that theoretically requires the least amount of work if you do it the way the unicorn hunters want to do it, which is a dyad dynamic plus somebody else that makes the two existing people in the relationship happy, because that's monogamy plus one, not polyamory. Like, if that makes sense. Like, I'm not trying to gatekeep what counts as being polyamorous, but sort of the joke way of thinking about it, not maybe seriously ascribing that label to it, is there's monogamy plus one, and there's actually doing polyamory, and like, again, not gatekeeping it, but just sort of in a comedic way pointing out like how that type of pursuit of that kind of relationship ends up being so functionally the same as monogamy that it feels a little bit inaccurate to really call it polyamory because of the mindset and the work actually involved in doing it. So with unicorn hunting, I think the healthier way to do it, triad, seeking out a triad, is you got to break up that dyad. But yeah, there's a lot fucking going. I didn't even talk about the MS dynamic or the age gap or anything like that. Yeah, no, that's a bundle of red flags. The unicorn hunting, the fact that there's a huge age gap, the MS dynamic, the probable first experience of either polyamory or DS, like that is there's literally a handful of red flags in that. And I wish your friend the best. I hope that they feel like they have access to outside people to like reality check that relationship, to feel supported, because I imagine your friend is going to need a lot of support, because either from the MS or from the poly triad, like, Can it work out? Absolutely. Is it likely to work out both from a poly and MS perspective? Probably not. And that can lead to a lot of hurt feelings, resentment, trauma, even. And that kind of dynamic, especially with the existing power dynamic there with the age, can very, very easily lead to, unfortunately, but it must be said, an abusive dynamic where your friend is kind of treated as like this, I don't know, the toy or doll that's kind of tossed around between people and is not really genuinely being respected as a person, which I think you have to have as like a baseline in BDSM is like, I am a person that is treated as an actual human being, not just like a sex toy. So yeah, lots of things to be concerned with there, Johnny. I look forward to any follow-up information, but we can keep talking about that. But yeah, it's just, unless like the only exception to this, and I will say, is like I would be less worried if this was like they're 50 but they've been doing polyamory for like 30 years, you know, like they've been polyamorous their whole married life. They're very, very used to poly, like they're an active part. Because I find what happens is I think that there is, in terms of safety at least, a meaningful difference between like a random married couple. I shouldn't assume that they're married. I'm assuming that they are. But a random married couple that has been together for 40 years and then now they're opening up the relationship to add this like young brand new person to it. And then they do MS, but they only ever do things at home, in private, behind closed doors. They don't go to the community. They don't educate themselves. Like if they're only participating in private at home, and no one else can really see their dynamic or how they play together if they respect boundaries, that becomes much more dangerous very quickly on top of everything else as a red flag there, just because if you're not being monitored by like a public community that can help keep you accountable, though not entirely, a lot of people obviously slip through the cracks, or like the person who runs a local community is a piece of shit themselves, and so they kind of let bad things happen. But if you're not participating in the local community and you're kind of like keeping this younger, newer person away from information, that can be dangerous. And I always worry about what happens in like relationships like that, where like it's such a high level of power exchange. It's such like there's just so much room for turmoil there. I worry for your friend, and I hope again that she has a support network to help her with that. All right. I'm going to look for some more questions, but that's a great opening question. All right, look at my dog. Now you can see her fully on the screen have a little nap as she does. It sort of feels like watching one of those video cameras of like a panda at the zoo. They've been on the scene for a year. Oh, okay. I don't know if they is the couple or if they is the 50-year-olds in this. The 50-year-olds, if it's a 19-year-old. They had a short DDLG dynamic that broke down, and while she's informed, it definitely feels rushed and exclusive. Their first scene was very sexual, too. Sorry, I didn't mean, that was like an involuntary response. I don't feel like, I don't want to be judgmental, but like, I'm just picturing like a 50-year-old man like doing a very sexual BDSM scene with a 19-year-old. I just have like an involuntary response of like, I don't like that. Like, again, some people have like, listen, there are young people who have a kink for dating very older people, like a grandpa fetish. Like, it's a thing. It's absolutely a thing. But for me, I'm just instantly suspect of that. I'm sorry. Yeah, they've been in this scene for a short deal. Yeah. Yeah, just, oh god. They called this one a try, but literally called her a unicorn in response to a FetLife post. Oh no, this is on FetLife. Oh god. They're calling, oh, it's like weirdly self-aware, but like not in a good way. They called her a unicorn in response to a FetLife post. Oh no. Yeah, I mean, it's technically like being in a relationship with a unicorn is technically a triad. Like, it's not incorrect to call it a triad. It is a certain flavor of triad, and it's not always the best. Oh lordy. Okay. Well, I'll follow up information or questions if necessary, I suppose. I'm glad I'm not the only one who sees the issues with this dynamic. She's mature / experienced for a 19-year-old. Emphasis on the 4, I'll put there. But it's still a problematic dynamic full of red flags as far as I can see. Yes, I think we're on the same page about that assessment. But this is kind of the issue. Whenever you're, like, if you have a friendship with somebody and you see that they're in an unhealthy relationship, they're kind of ignoring red flags. Unfortunately, most of the time for most situations, it doesn't really work that well for you to go, hey, you know, this is really problematic, right? Like, you know, this is like bad and unhealthy. Because especially like if you're kind of in this like new relationship energy, probably lots of sub frenzy, lots of like kind of if chemicals from subspace and orgasms and all that shit, like it makes you really blind to issues that can be there in the relationship. And when you hear somebody really directly and bluntly push back in the relationship and just telling you that it's bad and awful and you shouldn't be in it, or that it's got a lot of red flags to it makes you go, no, they don't know what they're talking about. This relationship is perfectly healthy. They should stop kink shaming me. They need to stop being so monogamous and shaming me for being polyamorous. This is discrimination. Like, it kind of makes people curl up and become instantly defensive of this new thing that they found, that at least for probably the time being, I imagine, is really rewarding and has benefits to it. And they kind of just look at the benefits and go, but look at all this. They got all this experience. They got all these toys. Like, I get this, that, and the other out of it. And then on the other side, obviously, you've got the mountain of red flags. But currently, this is up here, like, right, all the positives are up here and the negatives are down here, and they can't really see the negatives through all the positives. And so I think it requires like patience and time and being there as an open friend and a shoulder to cry on. And I think, like, honestly, and this is like disaster planning to be sure, but in my head, I also think about this, like, if you kind of fight on the relationship too much, like if you're too insistent on this being a problematic red flag filled relationship to your partner in a really direct way, they tell their triad partners about you saying this as their friends, and then they come back because of their MS dynamic and go, you're not allowed to talk to that person anymore. I, as your master, tell you, you must go no contact with this friend because they are dangerous. They are filling your head with lies. They're a kink shamer. They're, you know, you should no longer associate with them. And so I think kind of the play here for the hopeful safety of your friend to have maybe a landing pad is to be not directly supportive of it. Like, don't lie and say that you're, you know, you can say you're happy for them. You can say, you know, I hope that this ends up being a really great relationship for you. Like, you can express, you know, hope and compassion for the relationship without necessarily directly endorsing it as being good, and try to just be there for your friend as, like, again, a shoulder to cry on, somebody they can talk to, somebody that will be there for them if and when things start to go bad that hasn't been forced out of their life. Because especially with MS, you have to be really careful, because if this does go in a negative direction, they will absolutely tell this person to cut people off. They will absolutely be like, I'm taking over your social media accounts as your master. I'm getting access to all of your passwords. I am going to be logged into your Facebook account. I'm going to track your location on my phone. I'm going to read your diary. And because, again, that newness, that age gap, that trust that's there because of that age and their kind of more superior experience because of that age, they might feel like, well, they are my master and I want to be a good slave. I want to be a good property or whatever. So I'm going to just obey them and listen to them and go along with it. Even if, like, if you told someone in the abstract, you know, would you be okay if somebody took all of your passwords and, you know, tracked your phone location and made you wear a GPS device? Like, would that be okay? Like, you'd probably be like, no, that sounds excessive. But when you're in the heat of the moment in this new dynamic with all of the wonderful emotions and feelings and experiences that go with that, you're much more likely to go, yes, master, please, whatever you want. I will put a GPS tracker under my skin if it would please you, master. Like, you're so much more likely to kind of fall into that, and like, ugh, not great. A good question from Llama138. Advice for D /S. Okay, so sorry, the apostrophes threw me for a second. Okay, so you're the D type, and then you have a female submissive partner. with chronic illness and recent issues with stress for Dom. Yes. So I am sure members of our chat, because there are usually a couple of you in here, can, if you want to, share your experiences and tips and tricks for dealing with like chronic health and pain issues in a BDSM dynamic. Absolutely, that's totally possible. What I normally recommend to people, I'm going to go ahead and pull up a link for this, is there's a great kind of, I don't know what I would call this, a trilogy, a set of books that's by an author named Raven Caldera and his boy Joshua Tenpenny, and they have a bunch of really good books about this, and I'm putting a link to their website on the stream chat now. So there's one there's Broken Toys and Mastering Mind, and they are two books that go together. One talks about mental illness and neurological issues as a submissive. The other one talks about the same thing but from the dominant perspective. I also have it on good authority that they're currently working specifically on a book about neurodivergence and autism and BDSM, so look for that one soon. And then they have a similar book series. Again, same thing, one for submissives, one for dominants. That's about physical disability and chronic illness. And those ones are called Kneeling in Spirit and Hell on Wheels. And again, link to that is going to be going in the chat here as soon as I can navigate my way back over to that. That would be like my primary resource I would probably direct you towards for kind of like, because like what... Oh, thank you, Twixie.
Something I thought of if you decide to do a follow-up to this week's vid. Writing smut for your partner to get your feelings out for kinks that would be too extreme to do IRL.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. I love that idea. Writing smut. Writing your own erotica and sending it to your partner. That is certainly something I've done in the past, and it can be a really great tool. So thank you for sharing that. Getting back to the chronic illness question and dealing with that, I mean, it's kind of hard to answer without kind of having specific details, because like chronic illness could be anything from like type 1 diabetes, IBS, cancer. Like it could be a bunch of different things that all have possible different and like conflicting needs, right? Like if you're dealing with like chronic fatigue syndrome or like post-COVID issues, that's going to be very different from like, I don't know, insomnia or again, like, you know, IBS or something like that, where you kind of have to identify the unique things that you have to work around or work with in your dynamic and kind of evaluate what that means, right? Because like if you have a partner that has, let's say, like insomnia issues, giving them a bedtime and telling them to wake up at a certain hour isn't necessarily going to be like effective or healthy. As far as I know, I don't have experience personally with insomnia. And, you know, likewise, you know, with something, I'm trying to think of like a good generic example for, like just like chronic pain in a really general way. Like if you're dealing with chronic pain, from what I have come to learn from people that have experiences with chronic pain, you will likely discover that there are certain types of pain that actually can help you feel more relief from the chronic pain you're experiencing. And I know a number of masochists, I can't really put a percentage to it, but I know a pretty large number of masochists that are that way because they have chronic pain issues, and the experiences they have with BDSM allow them to kind of get out of their normal pain experience every day and feel a little bit of like relief and distraction from that, and like the cathartic release that you get from like the chemicals that happen when you're playing with somebody and you're feeling good. So that I think is one thing to think about, is, you know, your chronic pain and like how to work around that. Now, as far as stress is concerned, and oh, here's the blanket. Hi, doggo dog. I know. Am I gonna pet you? I'm gonna pay the petting tool. She was like, you didn't pet me very well, human. It's okay, lay back down, honey. Lay back down. Good girl. You just seem confused. Like, should I lay down, or are you gonna pet me? Maybe we'll just get down on the floor and pet Bandit later at the end of the stream. Maybe I'll do that. But for the stress issue, that is I think, such a common problem in DS relationships and just like life in general, honestly. Like most of us, especially if we're American, live very stressed out, fast paced lives where we have so many demands on our time and our attention, and it's very difficult to make like mindful, connective space for being with partners. And oh, okay. I have COPD. Vented I think ball gag is what this adapted scenes also have chronic pain. The endorphins released in scenes act as a long-term pain relief for me. Yes, great. Thank you for sharing that. As a masochist with endometriosis, I relate to your last statement. Yes. Fun pain turns off my chronic pain and overactive mind. Yes. And actually, that's a really great point, right? Like, if you're dealing with stress, like BDSM can be a really good way to deal with that stress. I think we oftentimes associate the stress relief component of like one of the benefits of BDSM as being more of like a submissive bottom thing, because, you know, as the bottom, you're receiving the sensation, you're kind of getting out of your body a little bit, or really into your body and having a lot of like body awareness. And then you're getting all these endorphins, you're getting all of these like feel good, happy chemicals from the sensation you're experiencing. But also at the same time, like that also happens for tops and doms in a different way than it happens for submissives and bottoms. You can still have that feeling of that rush. And I think for doms, actually, the stress relief benefit that BDSM can present to you is I overheard somebody the other day explaining this about Florentine flogging, and which is when you're using two floggers and you're doing like, I can't actually do the thing, it's like something like this, I think, but it's like you're kind of doing overlapping, like I think it's like you're doing kind of two double eights at the same time, maybe something like that. Anyway, just picture Florentine flogging. So you're using two floggers simultaneously, and it's a bilateral stimulation of the brain, where you're kind of getting this rhythmic, you know, one side of your body, one side of your body, one side of your body, one side of your body. And that can really help people get into subspace very easily. But also for why? I keep combining words today. For doms and tops, that can be something, and thank you for the super chat. I'll read that one in a second. That can be something that also is very relaxing. So before I finish that, let's read the super chat. Any tips on explaining DS to clueless older vanillas? For context, my mom worries about me and thinks as a woman submitting I'm being anti-feminist. Oh, don't you love it when moms just care about us and they just want what's best for us and they're worried for our health and safety, but then they go way too far? Classic problem. I'm going to finish this thought, Alexandria, and then I will absolutely talk about that, but good question. So to kind of wrap up my thoughts about like the stress and everything, when you're doing something that's very rhythmic, I think flogging is great for this. I think caning is great for this if you're into impact play and pain play. But also, like, you can do a really sensual flogging. You can do a really sensual caning with like a really like a thick, you know, leather covered cane, or with like a really really soft deer or like goat or sheep suede flogger, something that's really really soft and light, where you're doing that rhythmic, you know, stroke technique, and you're, you know, it goes and you get into that what's called a flow state, where you get really focused into that one behavior that you're doing. Everything else kind of goes away, and you're just focused on what you're actively doing in that moment. And it allows you, without having to do meditation or do yoga or anything else, it allows you to kind of shut off other parts of your brain, and that can actually be a really big stress relief. But I think the problem is that a lot of people run into is making time for that, is making time for them to be able to have that space of like, okay, we're going to do this. We feel really stressed out before even planning this. We have all the stuff we got to do. We got the kids. We got to do stuff this weekend. We got garden. We got to do this, that, and the other. And it's really difficult to just like set aside that 30 minutes, half an hour once a week to get to have that scene space. But if you can do something that's about stress relief for both you and your partner, but it's also really intimate and connecting, again, I think caning's great for this. I think over the knee spanking, maybe to like the beat of some music, can be great for this thing. Flogging can be great for this. Anything where you can get really into focusing on doing like one task. I think really complicated scenes can be great. I think lots of costuming and role play and a script and this, all of that can be wonderful. It has a time and a place. And I think if what you need is just simple, good old fashioned stress relief, and you want maybe, you know, relief from dealing with some chronic issues, getting into that state of like rhythmic bodily awareness and connection can be a big benefit. Absolutely. Be the BDSM fidget spinner. Yes. Yes, it's a fidget spinner for BDSM. That's what it is. Oh, that's so funny. So anyways, getting back to Alexandria's question of any tips on explaining DS to clueless older vanillas. For context, my mom worries about me and thinks as a woman submitting I'm being anti-feminist. I mean, this is kind of the problem because the typical explanation that a lot of people will give to like vanilla folks about DS relationships, especially when they don't really know it's a BDSM thing, but they see you like doing certain like servicey or submissive things for your partner. The normal explanation, the common one you will see is, oh, BDSM is, that's not it. We just have a traditional relationship. We like to have a traditional relationship. We have traditional values. And I like that I get to make him his dinner plate. I like that I get to pack his lunch for work. I like that I get to iron his clothes. It makes me feel, it's romantic for us. And that doesn't really work if your parents are more on the liberal side of things and they're like, well, I'm worried that you doing that makes you anti-feminist. And I guess the trite line about this that I don't think really captures like a great answer to this, because it sort of reduces feminism down to a very, I don't know, pop culture-y, pop media take. But I think one quick thing you can say to sort of head that off is to just remind them that you're choosing to do this, and the benefit of feminism is that you as a woman get to make your choices freely, and that makes it fundamentally different than being coerced into a relationship like this, or this being the social expectation that you have to do this. And I think it's worth reminding your mom or anyone's parents, if you're dealing with this, that you are doing this not because it's I'm the woman, he's the man, this is the roles that we're supposed to be in, we have to do this. It's about both of you came to the table, you wanted to do this, it can stop at any time, right? You have a safe word, everything you do is negotiated, and maybe without going into too much detail, it'd be worth describing to your mom what the benefits are for you, right? It brings me stress relief, right? It helps me feel more relaxed. It makes me feel more secure in the relationship. I feel it helps us fight less. Whatever it is, talk about some of those benefits maybe, and that ultimately in the day, you can leave at any time. You're not being forced to do this. It is a freely given choice, and it makes you happy. And that hopefully if your mom loves you, she ultimately wants you to be happy. And, just thank her for the concern. I wouldn't brush off her concerns as being stupid. I wouldn't, don't talk down to her or anything. Validate that she wants you to be happy. She wants what's best for you. And their heart's in the right place, but that maybe she is worrying about something in a way she doesn't really need to worry about. Hopefully that helps put her mind at ease. Exactly, because nothing says feminism like telling a woman she's not allowed to do what she wants. I mean, I think there are definitely some rad femmes that will say stuff like that, where it's as a woman living in a patriarchal society, it's impossible for you to escape the pressure of patriarchal control, and your sexuality has been formed through this patriarchal lens. And so because you can't escape this, the only way to make sure that you're not really being taken advantage of by a man and centering a man's needs is to not be in relationships with men, or to always make sure that you're the dominant one and in control in the relationship, because it's the only way to make sure that you're safe, and not just needlessly prioritizing a man's pleasure over your own. And I kind of get that to an extent. I kind of get that in the sense of, well, you probably shouldn't go into it completely unaware of how your upbringing and socialization has influenced your decisions and preferences as far as sexual partners go, or enjoyment of BDSM. And I don't even know how you would study this, but it would be very interesting to see how your cultural upbringing affects your participation or enjoyment of BDSM. If you were raised very conservatively with traditional gender roles, does that make you more likely as a woman to be submissive or want to be submissive versus somebody who's liberal? But then you have to like test it for it in kind of like an implicit bias way, where I think a lot of people that have very like liberal values but don't participate in BDSM, the knee-jerk reaction would be to just say that they're not into that, because to say otherwise would be maybe saying you believe women like deserve to be underneath a man. And I think it's also worth pointing out, like, in general with conversations like this, that, like, you're not doing this because you believe the man is the head of the household and that you are his subservient, you know, helpmeet. It's about being an equal pair unequally that supports each other, and sometimes that looks like the woman being in charge, and sometimes it's the man, and sometimes it's the non-binary partner, and sometimes gender doesn't even matter. Sometimes it's not even a factor at all. But I think it's worth pointing out this isn't just like a gender essentialist man being the head of the household because that's the responsibility and duty of the man. It's also because it is what makes you both happy, really, at the end of the day. It's what makes you both happy. And you can opt out or leave at any time you want to. Unlike with an actual abusive dynamic where it's very, very difficult to actually leave. Modern radfems have fully allied with anti-feminists and Christians campaigning against trans rights. Absolutely. Yeah, when I say radfems, like in this context, I'm referring to like ye olde 80s radfems. You know, somebody who maybe is of like this person's parents' generation where, you know, it was the sexual revolution and women are going to take control and like how do we escape the patriarchy? And like, yeah, again, like I said, I think there is something that's worth considering about like how it affects your interest and thinking about, you know, am I doing this because this is what is socially expected of me as a woman? And especially with the way that we don't have a lot of sex ed, we don't have a lot of literacy around media, around porn, and how that can affect us and like what we consider erotic, you know? Because I think we're much more malleable mentally than we sometimes admit to as far as what we find erotic. Like a lot of that is very culturally dependent. A lot of what people end up finding erotic is taught to them, is it through media messaging, right? Through what's common in porn, through what they see it in their early like formative sexual years and in like early sexual experiences. Because, you know, 50 years ago, 80 years ago, right? It was common for women to have a full bush, right? There wasn't like, unless you were a prostitute in Paris, you pretty much had like body hair. And I always go back to this example because I have like a collection of like written in the era Victorian erotica written by Victorians. And let me tell you, the men who wrote erotica fucking loved women's body hair in the year 1875. Like, they loved body hair. And so for a long time, for most of human history, for 99.99% of human history, people found women's body hair to be attractive and to be a sexual turn on something that could have been eroticized. And now that has been relegated to a fetish, where it's a fetish to enjoy women's armpits or to enjoy genital hair. And it's seen as the norm and the standard now to be repulsed even by people's body hair and to require or expect a woman to be completely clean shaven, bare everywhere. And then, you know, people have to spend thousands of dollars on electrolysis and laser hair removal and getting waxed and sugared and shaving things, and like it's a whole industry, right? And so, you know, we kind of treat this as like, well, of course, you know, a woman shouldn't be hairy because it's manly to have hair. We did not think that long ago. So it's interesting to me to sort of, you know, people make these very like essential biological arguments about like, well, men like this because, you know, their biology. Women like being tied up and women like being restrained because it's in their biology to like it. I'm like, how much is it that women like that because of their biology, and how much of that is like culturally informed through like norms in pornography? And we see this kind of come up through like now, and I do see your super chat, Andrew. Thank you so much. I'll read that one off in a second. How do we parse our interest in BDSM from like those formative experiences, and how can we, I don't really think we can make statements about like what we would be into if we didn't have any of those influences on our consumption. And I think we've seen this with like the massive increase I've heard from sex workers, from young people, in the expectation that choking is part of vanilla sex now. That was not the case 10 years ago. That was not the case 20 years ago. It's a very recent phenomena because of what is represented in mainstream, you know, front page of Pornhub, you know, stuff, that choking is seen as like a normal part of a sex act in the same way that kissing is. Like, it's just something that everyone does, and you know, it's just it's common, it's normal, it's commonplace. But it's not really, though, right? Like, it's a high level thing. It's very risky. It's riskier than any other part of that sex act, as long as you're, you know, tested for STIs and stuff. It's a lot, you know. It's concerning that it's out there, and it's kind of, it is part of a lot of people's formative sexual experiences now, where, you know, there are 16-year-olds that are being pressured by their freaking boyfriends into having anal and being choked. And it's like, come on now. Because I know people that are like Gen Xers, you know, people that are in their 40s now, and, you know, older millennials even as well, where it was not the standard part of somebody's like sexual repertoire at like 20 to be into, to do anal, oral, and vaginal all sometimes in the same act, you know, like, and that's really changing now, where it's sort of like, if you don't do anal or like be choked, like, you're kind of seen as prudish. That's like a really big problem in polyamory as well, right? Like, people think if you don't have sex by the second date and you're not fucking pegging somebody and doing anal and having foursomes, that you're a prude. And like, God, it's just like, just let people like, just let people do what they want, and stop putting weird messaging in their brains about like, you should like this, and this is what normal sexuality is. So anyways, I guess the point of everything that I'm saying is to say that like, what we find attractive and good and desirable is changeable, and we could choose as a society to alter how porn is produced, what kind of porn is in accessible places for young people, and that would probably have radical results on how people relate to their sexuality and what they find erotic. But at the same time, you know, I don't want to demonize like porn either. I want to be careful, because I don't believe in porn addiction. I think that people can use porn as an unhealthy coping mechanism. That is different than a biochemical addiction to a substance. So I prefer to think of porn as being something that can be potentially used as a maladaptive coping mechanism rather than it being an addiction. And it can be used irresponsibly. It can influence people, obviously, in an undue way that can cause problems, especially later on in somebody's sexual experiences, because of the lack of media literacy, the lack of sex literacy, the lack of sex ed. We can't expect people to relate to porn in a different way than they currently do if we're not teaching them how to do that, if we're not giving them the skills to analyze their interest in porn and what they like about it, and realize and separate fantasy and reality, and this being a performance versus what actual sex really looks like. So I don't want to demonize porn. I don't want to say that it's bad, but it absolutely does influence people. And I do, you know, like, it's not that it gives you Swiss cheese brain, but it does affect you in some way, where if at 12 years old, your first experience of sexuality is like two dicks going into one hole while somebody's being spit roasted, like, you know, there is an impact on that. There is something that you're going to look at that and go, oh, this is what this is supposed to be about, if absent of any other information. And that's really the big issue, is I think the absence of other information, of other input. But that being said, let's go ahead and get to Andrew's question, because I've not answered that one yet. So Andrew says, doing a rope class for the first time and I'm being tight. Oh, that's exciting. I have a ligament flare up in my knee sometimes that makes it hard to bend. Do you have any tips for stretching to make it easier to work with? So I'm not an expert on this, but like, ligaments are different from like muscles, right? And especially if your knee is like hard to bend and you're looking at like knee mobility, I would probably do some like nerve flossing and like nerve flossing or nerve gliding for like hamstrings and kneecaps, and that can help your like literally it's like kind of helping your nerves be able to move through their various positions without causing a flare up and without like getting shocked and then tightening up. It allows your nerves to kind of feel more comfortable being in more than one position, and hopefully that'll help your knee be easier to bend than maybe it currently is. But I'm trying to think of like specifically around like the knee joint area, like mobility for that, because it's not really a flexibility issue. It's more of a mobility issue with like the knee, I think, and the ligaments around the knee. I'm not a physical therapist, so I don't really have necessarily a great answer for that. But what I would generally recommend is definitely obviously communicate to your partner about the knee injury. Ask for modifications during class. Bring padding for your knees, especially. That could literally be like soccer knee pads. You can get some cheap ones on Amazon. That could be a cushion for your knees. Bring stuff to make sure that part of your body stays warm is really important whenever you're doing physical activity and stretching. Like bring layers, wear some nice warm socks, wear some nice warm sweatpants, something that you can definitely be tight over that's comfortable, but will offer some like additional warmth, because when your muscles are warm, they're less likely to be shocked and like contract and like stretch up and like, you know, feel angry because of the movement. Right, it's basically whenever I bend it, it makes it hard to stand back up. Ooh, yeah. I am all about visiting a physical therapist for any mobility issues. They will give you specific exercises you can do. Yeah, I don't know how much time or like, I don't know if you have money to do this either or insurance coverage to do this, but even just seeing like a physical therapist for like one session to get some like tips for like knee ligament stretching. You know, you can tell them that like, hey, I want to start running, you know, you can whatever, right? You tell them, I want to start going to the gym, I want to start running, like what can I do to help like support my knee? I imagine a lot of it's going to be like strength building, maybe around the knee to help your like knees feel more stable, and then it's also going to be like probably helping your nervous system. Like that's actually the big thing, honestly. When your muscles are tight, it is typically like either like a biomechanical thing of like your posture is really shit, right? Which is me. My posture is fucking terrible. I've my whole life I've always bent over to read books like this, and it's made my posture really terrible my whole life. But sort of the mechanical aspect of like your posture being bad, kind of, you know, making certain muscles tight or like overly stretched. But for the most part, with things that are especially like lower body stuff, like, you know, hamstrings or like shoulders, anywhere you've had an injury around, like your muscles can get really tight because your muscles are like scared essentially and trying to help I don't know how to describe this exactly. It's not that they're like scared, maybe it's not even the right word, but like your body is trying to protect itself, and having really tight muscles is a way that your body tries to protect itself from further injury and to help like stabilize the area or help like basically, especially if your muscles are really weak, they have to be really tight to offer the same amount of support. Whereas like when they're stronger, they, you know, they can loosen up a little bit and maybe offload that burden onto the supporting muscles versus being overly stretched to kind of like prevent, you know, that injury from occurring. So it's really about like helping your nervous system relax and be okay with whatever range of movement you're trying to go towards, which is why you have to stretch really consistently, is to help like your nervous system be like, okay, it's okay if we're in this position, we don't have to freak out, we don't have to tighten up, it's okay. And you know, yeah. But you can also definitely do bondage from a chair. So like if you're worried about your knee or anything else getting injured again, or, you know, just being really stiff and having difficulty standing up, like you can do bondage standing up. You can do it from a chair. That's all like that's very, very much an easy fix. Wearing a bracelet is also a good idea as well. I've had joint issues and it's helped previously. Indeed, the biomechanics can be complex. My left ankle is weakened because I compensate for a knee injury. Come to think of it, I need to follow my own advice. Oh, yeah. We all do. Because I need to go to a PT because my neck actually is not really a problem. My back is. And I don't really have back pain, but my back is definitely like, I sometimes feel like I wish I could have a massage therapist just wring out my spine like a towel. That's really what I want, honestly. That's the goal. That's the dream. Medieval torture me. Massage therapist. Okay. Is it okay to get very bothered by my dom downloading porn pics when I'm around, and I get all hysterical because he is not focusing on me and he says I should try to get his attention? I get weird vibes from that. So it's like you're around him and then you're like by his computer or phone or whatever, and then he's like browsing a porn thing or like an OnlyFans account and then is like downloading photos in front of you. Like, I don't know. Like, the vibe I get from that, like, there's one thing if it's like, oh, my boyfriend or whoever is like watching porn and I have to, you know, cope with that mentally, but it's okay that he's watching it. Just kind of makes me uncomfortable to know that he's watching it somewhere at some point. Whereas I think this sounds more like a situation of like, not just like, oh, he's browsing porn, it makes me uncomfortable. It kind of sounds like he's doing it on purpose to like make you jealous or like goad you into doing certain behaviors for him. Like, it's sort of a like, you're not even good. Like, it almost sort of feels humiliating in a way where it's like, oh, you're not even good enough to hold my attention. If you really want to hold my attention and get me to not download this pornography, you have to do this for me instead. And I don't know, it just feels weird. I don't love it. Not loving it. That's what I can say about that. I am not loving it. That seems weird. But it's also like, it's, I don't know if I'd even trust them to give me like a direct answer. I don't know if I could trust them to give me a direct answer about why they're doing what they're doing. Because I feel like in that kind of situation, they'd be more likely to say, oh, it's not a problem. Don't worry about it. It is very sus. It is very sus, though. Yeah. It's like, I don't know if they'd even be honest if I tell, like, hey, this, because, like, the healthy communication thing to do here is to say, I've seen you downloading porn when I'm around you. That makes me uncomfortable. I don't have an issue with you watching pornography. I would just prefer if you want to browse it that I'm not around when you do. And, like, this is a boundary for me. But they'll probably go, oh, no, it's not that. Like, I'm not trying to make you jealous. I'm not trying to do anything. It's just, like, this is just what guys do. And it's, yeah. It's just, I get some jealousy vibes, too. But I guess it is only a feeling. Yeah, it's just hard to know, right? Like, without knowing the people, it does kind of feel a little bit like it intentionally trying to provoke jealousy. It does. I get the energy. It's sort of like, I'm trying to make you jealous and make you want me by doing this thing. And like, you should want to try and outperform it. And like, for some people, like, that is a good motivation. They like feeling a little bit like, prove you're good enough for me. And they enjoy that as a motivation for their BDSM relationship. But it's not common enough to where I think it's safe for you to assume that that's like what your partner wants either. He really seems to be trying to trigger the BPT between that and the monitoring you. Yeah, it sounds like it. That's not great. Okay. We have another super chat here from Anon Panon. Love it. Any tips for me, female cis, bi/poly, and 32, who wants... I love that you guys are adding more details about yourself. It's very helpful for me answering these questions. Thank you. Not required, though, if you don't want to share the personal details. Not required at all. Who wants to get back into the scene after 10 years. During my time away, I became a switch, but I've never interacted in a community that way. Let me think about this for a second. Okay, so I think that because you've been away for so long, you actually have a really great opportunity to go into the scene without anyone there knowing anything about you and having any kind of expectation of who you are. And oh my god, my dog's stretching. He's so sweet. Thank you. Thanks for the super chat. There seems to be a little bit of a delay on that today for some reason. I don't know what's going on with Streamlabs there on that one. But I think you have a really great opportunity that not very many people get to like reinvent themselves in the scene, because a lot of people will be doing BDSM for a long time and they'll kind of discover 5 years into their journey, oh, I think I might actually be a switch. I'm a sadist. I'm a daddy. I'm a mommy. And then because everyone else in their scene knows them as something else entirely, it's really difficult to break away from that and actually get to be what your new identity is and have that be equally seen and respected and valued. Whereas because now nobody really knows you necessarily, or doesn't maybe remember you that well, you can come in and just say, I'm a switch, and hopefully, other than, you know, being a woman and probably a more heterosexual leaning BDSM space, because, you know, even being, you know, bisexual, you're probably not exclusively going to be in lesbian leather bars, I imagine. We're gonna blank it out. All right. Gonna make it cozy. All right, there we go. Cozy time activated. Yeah, I think you have a really good opportunity to just like God, and it depends so much on where you live, because there are a lot of places that actually have a really, really good like female dominant, like kind of queer female space. And they have a lot of like, educational opportunities. You won't really know until you go out there and research, which I feel like is the next step for this, is like actually figuring out like, trying to move my freaking chair here. I think the next step is figuring out, okay, I want to do BDSM. Where do I want to do this at? And I think that definitely looking for like more female, like queer centered spaces would be a really, really good option for you if that's around where you live. And I think that it's more likely you're going to be openly accepted for your identity in those spaces. I have not personally experienced this, but I certainly know people in scenes that have experienced this, that as a female switch, they are kind of just been like, oh, like, I mean, you're not really a switch. You're submissive in denial about it. And like sort of this belief that, again, all women are submissives, all men are dominants, and like women who want to play at being a dominant, it's just kind of cute, pat, you know. But certainly have a lot of really good opportunities potentially. So look for female-oriented spaces, look for queer-oriented spaces. Those are probably going to be really good for you. There can also be events for switches too. There can be play parties, discussion groups, support groups. Look for ones that are catered towards switches or are ran by a switch as well, even if the party isn't themed around that or the event isn't themed around that. Just knowing that you're going to be in community with other people who are switches, and naturally, if it's like a discussion group that's led by a switch, they are much more likely to have resources and information for you for how to explore your switchiness, you know? Yeah. It's I would say, as far as interacting with the community as a switch, I think you just have to be very, very clear about the fact that you're a switch, and you got to be careful to avoid being typecasted, which I don't know if there's a specific BDSM word for that experience, but that's what I have always called it, because oftentimes people will get a reputation pretty quickly because people love sorting people into boxes and going, you're the person who does this, you're this kind of person. And to avoid becoming like the bondage bottom, the rope top, the service submissive, whatever. And like those things can all be true about you, but sometimes people get stuck in this frame of mind of, you are this person, you are this thing, and deviation from that becomes much more difficult. So just be very open and honest about the fact that you're a switch. Try to pursue experiences of people that allow you to explore that switchiness early on, so that way you stake your reputation not on like becoming the rope bottom or becoming the service top or whatever. You are the switch, you know, people will know that about you. But good luck. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised at the state of the scene over the last 10 years, because we have so many more options now for online events, online education, and we've had a lot more conversations about, you know, consent and negotiation and dealing with problematic people and abusers in our community in that time. And I think the scene is largely, though not entirely, safer than it used to be. Not perfectly safe, but certainly an improvement. How do you find lesbian leather bars? Oh, that would be paradise. I mean, I don't know either. I know that like gay male leather bars are typically be called like the Eagle. Like that's one of the big stereotypical names. I don't, cause like lesbian bars in general are just like not common. The lesbian bar is dying out. There's many think pieces to be written about this, but there are certainly like queer women's and like like lesbians' leather spaces, but they don't tend to be like permanent physical fixtures where it's like you just show up on a Saturday and they're there. You gotta know where to look. Oh, that's actually such a good point. I never thought of it as an opportunity. Yes, it is an opportunity. You have a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. And let me tell you, women, females that want to top or dominate is a rare commodity in most BDSM communities. And I think you will quickly find yourself play partners that will be more than happy to play with you and love the fact that you're like a switch who wants to top or dom sometimes. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, let's get back to some questions. Oh, it's already 7:15. I don't know why I just started feeling really tired all of a sudden. I had some chocolate before I started the live stream because I was like, I haven't eaten anything today. I need to have something in my face before I start streaming. And I don't think somehow that was sufficient. So whoopsie doodle. I spent too much time gardening today. That was my problem. All right, let's make sure we haven't missed any questions here. Did anyone see the news on Andrew Tate being very unwell physically? Yeah, I guess they're saying that Andrew Tate has lung cancer, which my personal opinion about this, and this is very much my personal opinion about this, is I'm not sure that Andrew Tate actually really does have cancer. I think that they're trying to come up with an explanation for like when he's seen outside of jail, like if he's seen just outside, like going to court hearings and things, like why does he look less fit? Why does he have like, why is he pudgier? Why is he less muscle mass? Why does he look pale? Because he can't fake tan anymore. I think they're trying to come up for explanations for like his change in physicality, because like such a big part of his personal brand and identity is him like being a certain way physically. But I did see the news. I'm not sure how to think about it necessarily. I'm not sure how true it is. It might be. He clearly smokes a lot. Like he definitely like, it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility for him to have cancer, but I'm not sure how likely it is versus like he's going to build this up to be like a narrative of like, I was in jail and I had cancer and they tormented me, but I survived and I beat cancer and now I'm bigger and badder than ever and pay $50 for my workshop on how to, pay $50 a month to join my class where I'm going to teach you about conquering anything because I got through being locked up in Romanian prison and also having lung cancer, and now there's no excuses to be a brokey or whatever, Now I still have my Bugatti, I don't think he's ever really gonna get out of prison enough to be able to do that particular scam again, but only time will tell. Question. Somebody in a primal group mentioned marking their partner or being marked outside of water sports. Is this a common thing? Is this a common thing? I think it depends on where you're looking. I have certainly seen that language. I think I associate it more with like ABO fanfiction, so like alpha, beta, omega fanfiction. I feel like I remember seeing that all the goddamn time on Tumblr. Like this idea of like marking your partner. And I think Lindsay Ellis even mentioned this in her video she did about ABO fanfiction and like that, like the Omega verse as it's called, which is sort of like related to primal play, but it's not really the same thing at all. I don't know, it's confusing. It's weird. Yeah, I don't think it's that common. In real life, is it common? I don't think so. Have I definitely seen it in fan fiction? Absolutely. I think I've seen people doing like biting as like a form of marking, but I don't know if they call it like being marked or like a marking scene. It's just part of like the mental thing that makes it hot, So I think having a fantasy about being marked is probably common, but I don't know how many people actually do it either. But again, I think the language I've mostly heard this referenced with is like for fan fiction purposes, not necessarily like real life BDSM scenes. Yes, thank you. If you have been here a bit and haven't, do consider joining my Patreon. Most adult and BDSM content is demonetized, so patrons help keep the channel going. That is very true. I kid you not. I can go right now. I think almost all of my most recent videos have been demonetized. Some of them for just like reasons I don't understand at all. Like, just why is this one okay? Why is this one not? Like, the video I did most recently on extreme kinks, that one got demonetized. The roleplay video, that one got demonetized originally, and then it got remonetized later for some reason. Marilyn Manson video demonetized. Free use video demonetized. Egalitarian BDSM and topping from the bottom demonetized. Yeah, it's like almost all of my BDSM videos have been demonetized recently. Like, the collar one was monetized somehow. Temperature play video was monetized. Power change video was demonetized. Kink versus BDSM was demonetized. Vanilla shaming and TikTok, that one was demonetized. Romantic BDSM ideas, that one was demonetized. BDSM advent calendar, demonetized. Fat Life Guide, demonetized. Like, it's a lot of yellow dollar signs. It's weird though, because like my Andrew Tate video was monetized. My Blair White video was monetized. Like I can talk about people talking about BDSM and pedophilia and abuse, but I can't monetize explaining to people how to have a healthy egalitarian BDSM relationship. Like, make it make sense, YouTube. It does not. It truly, truly does not. Yeah. YouTube's a fun place. YouTube is a fun place for sure. It's because I'm a modern feminist, basically role-playing a submissive 1950s housewife. I mean, but that's like what makes it subversive, right? It's because that you're like a modern feminist woman that role-playing, but not actually being a 50s housewife becomes subversive. Totally. Question, not sure if you've talked about this in a previous vid, but what are your thoughts on Feedism? I'm assuming that's like feeders, like feederism. I don't know what the actual language for that is. Is it Feedism? Is that what it's called? That feels wrong. I'm not saying that you're wrong. I just don't think I've heard that before. Oh, I guess that some people do. There's like r/Feedism. Exploring Feedism, a sexual fetish revolving around weight gain. Feedism for fat liberation. Feedism is a sexual interest in being fat or feeding, often extending to interest in weight gain and fat. Okay, I guess that's the word. I thought it was that feederism was the, maybe that's, or feeder and feedee relationships. Like, that's kind of what I thought it was referred to, but apparently I stand corrected. So, what do I think about this? I think this is one of those kinks that is very challenging for people to kind of wrap their head around and like understand as being consensual, right? Because there are people that are into pretty controversial kinks, right? There are Jewish people that are into Nazi roleplay. There are African American people and other people of color that are into like slave role play and race play, and they, you know, they're into it. They embrace it. They find it healing in some fashion. They enjoy it. I don't really know enough about Feedism dynamics, I think, to really make a good call on that. At the same time, though, I think there are people who probably do it outside of like a consensual limited power exchange dynamic into like, because there's a difference between like having it maybe be an element of a DS relationship to play with occasionally in a scene, and then there's like having it be a fetish, where I think, for example, on Verbs and Altars, love that channel, great channel, love Dorian, on the channel of Verbs and Altars, they've talked about as an anorexic person, kind of in the opposite direction of this, like anorexia chasers, basically, like men typically, because most fetishists are men. I don't know what I want to say it's like 75% of fetishists are men. But also that could be, honestly, I think a lot of that is like clinical evaluation for fetishism is based on like men's experience of being a fetishist. And so naturally, like, it's the same way that like a lot of like diagnostic tests or criteria for like autism is based on like the male autistic experience, which doesn't necessarily map onto the female autistic experience. And I think with fetishes it can be the same, or where it's like you're evaluating whether or not somebody's a fetishist, but really you're just evaluating whether or not somebody's a male fetishist, which is different. And I think that when you're dealing with it in more of a fetish, okay, and I'm trying to Google it, but I can't see what percentage of people, like, of any kind of fetish or one gender over the other. But anyways, I think going back to the example from A Verbs and Alters, like they've talked about their experience being a younger person, you know, in the early aughts on like anorexia forums, and how there would be men that would come onto these forums with a fetish encouraging women to essentially self-harm themselves through anorexia, and like encourage them to continually get skinnier and skinnier. And like they had a lot of like, there would be like there was a forum also that was for people that were fetishists of anorexics, and like the types of fantasies they have involved a lot of non-consent. A lot of it also tied into like pedophilic interests as well, which is, you know, God, that's not good at all. And so, you know, it was kind of, a lot of it was like encouraging people to hurt themselves and perpetuate like a really serious, deadly mental illness for the sake of their sexual thrill. And I think you can have a fantasy about things and engage in that fantasy in a responsible way where it does not lead to non-consensual harm of other people, and does not lead to them like having permanent alterations in their life path, let's say, to YouTube for this. And so I think the opposite end of that scale with feederism, I think, can probably be similarly problematic, in that when you're taking that fetish really far, like you could be causing somebody irreparable harm and damage to their body after a certain point. Not even necessarily from like just the weight gain by itself, but from like the how that alters your relationship with food and nutrition more generally. And also how, like, I don't know, just like it warps your sense of appetite and things. Like, I don't know, it just like, there's probably a lot of downstream effects from that are not great or positive. But also, there are ways, though I couldn't necessarily articulate the exact way that this would be done. I'm sure there are ways to engage in this as a fetish or a kink in a responsible and informed manner. And there are ways to involve yourself in it in a way that are not responsible. That does lead to unintended downstream harm. That does lead to long-term, very negative ramifications. And it's complicated. It's complicated. It's certainly not something you typically see in the BDSM community. Like, I don't think I know anyone who's into this. You'll see people that are into like wet and messy play, and like you know, force feeding their partner occasionally. Like, I knew somebody who would do that with, like, you know, they'd stuff their mouth full of marshmallows and shit. But like, the motivation for it was very, very different. It didn't really have any overlap at all. Feeder situations, unfortunately, often lead to health issues for the feedee, not shaming, just from what I've seen. Yeah, like, it's very different from, like, gradual, like, over your course of your life, like, weight gain. And, like, I'm not an expert in this. I'm not, you know, I'm not a mental health professional. I'm not a physical health professional. I'm not a doctor or anything. But, like, a very rapid weight gain from eating, usually, because a lot of the feedee stuff, from what I understand, tends to be a lot of, like, junk food and things. Like, it's basically like the Nikocado avocado situation, right? Like that one YouTuber, Nikocado Avocado, say that 5 times fast. Like, he rapidly put on a very high amount of weight, eating very, like, not very nutritious food that was very, very calorie dense and full of a lot of sugar. And, like, that absolutely can lead to, you know, long-term health issues not just because of weight gained by itself or being a heavier person, but how the weight was gained and how quickly it was gained can absolutely put a lot of stress on your body. Yes, and both anorexia and binge eating disorder and say about yes, exactly. Like it's not just like there's a difference between just like being a heavier person and like having a binge eating disorder. And I think that like in the same way that anorexia fetishism can lead to really negative outcomes for people with anorexia, like people with binge eating disorder that have an unhealthy relationship with food, that are using it as like a coping mechanism for typically, like I think it's really commonly associated with like trauma and abuse histories, especially. Like that, it just leads to further unhealthy, like it enables an unhealthy relationship, like this maybe isn't a perfect example, but I want to kind of move away from just like food related shit and maybe bring it back to something that is more common in BDSM. Like, if you had a partner that had a history of self-harm, I don't think it would be a good idea to, for example, do scenes with them where you were cutting them in the same way they would cut or hurt themselves in the same location. And then while you were doing it, you were telling them that they were worthless and stupid and disgusting and that they deserved to be hurt, right? Like, you would not go about doing that in a way where it reinforced the belief system underlying the original self-harm urge, you know? Like, just don't go there. I could see Feedism being helpful for someone who's had or has had an eating disorder, but IDK, like getting over fear of foods or whatnot. I mean, but like really, you shouldn't, like your partner shouldn't be doing exposure therapy for you completely unassisted. Like if you have phobias of certain foods, like texture issues, that should be something you talk about with a therapist, not have your partner do unsupervised, you know? I think it can be helpful, like, but again, this is the difference between like it being an extreme fetish that involves like non-consensual harm to other parties and like occasionally doing it as like a scene every once in a while as part of a larger dynamic. And like I could see somebody doing an ABDL scene that involves like forcing a fussy, like, you know, adult baby to eat like mushed up carrots or whatever. But like Feedism, for as I understand it, isn't just like it's about getting people to eat food and like food play stuff. It's about specifically like rapid weight gain, I think, is what a lot of people find erotic about it, which is a different scenario from just like having a healthier relationship with food, being more open to options with food. So finding a dom that looks like my abuser and replicating the circumstances of my abuse is not advised. Is it normal to want to replicate abuse in kink? No. So it's complicated. So Lee Harrington, who is a very well-known author and educator in the kink scene and beyond that as well, when he's taught classes about ABDL and age play and DDLG, he talks about there being a difference between asking your partner to dress up in retro clothes and dress older for the sake of a scene, and telling your partner to, you need to wear brown corduroy pants and this specific belt and wear, a patterned, 70s shirt and style your hair like this and wear this cologne and talk in this kind of accent. And then you are just making your partner turn into your uncle that actually abused you without their consent. Playing with that is, I cannot even express to you how dangerous that is. Like, if you want to do that, your partner has to be totally on board and aware of the very real role that they are playing. And do not do that. Don't even approach doing that if you do not have a larger mental health support system in place. Because I guarantee you, even if it seems like a really good idea to explore your traumas through BDSM, if you are not doing that with the help of mental health professionals along the way, it is almost 100% certain that you are going to run over some landmines you didn't know were there and cause yourself and your relationship some really irreparable damage. If your only motivation for BDSM is to like replay out your abuse and find somebody who looks like your abuser and redo the abuse over again to try and process it, I would really recommend doing some therapy first and maybe kind of work. And I'm assuming you haven't done therapy, and like, the thing is like, you can just say get therapy. You have to have a good therapist that does therapy in a modality that works for you, right? Having 2 years of plain talk therapy where you're not getting any skills, you're not really working through specific issues, and you're just like coming in and complaining about your day for an hour and then going home. That for therapy and like for abuse and trauma is probably not going to be as helpful as like IFS or EMDR. I always get confused. EDMR. I think it's EMDR. And a couple of other like, or like if you have OCD, like acceptance and commitment behavior, like acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT. Like there's a lot of therapy modalities. So it's not just like get therapy in general. Like find a good therapist that works for trauma that actually helps you work through that trauma. And then you can maybe start working through some of that, where maybe you can explore some elements of things that were involved, you know, in your abusive relationship previously, but it isn't like literally finding somebody who looks like your abuser and then replaying the whole dynamic with somebody. Like that's like really intense, and I would not recommend doing that as your main motivation for kink. There should be something else bringing you to that. And it is absolutely, yes, correct. It is not a substitute for therapy. It can be something that can be a healthy tool, but I wouldn't have that be your first line thing you're doing either. Playing a role versus molding blurred lines can cause trouble. Yeah, you have to be careful. I think that like if it's to the point where you want to find somebody who specifically resembles your abuser because they look like your abuser, that's probably a step too far in my book. Plus, like, how many people, like, if you told them, if you went up to a dom and were like, anyway, so I've never done BDSM, I'm not saying this is you, but like, I'm making a hyperbolic example to make a point, is, you know, hey, I'm brand new to BDSM, I've never done this before, I like you because you look like my abuser and I want you to abuse me the way my abuser did. Does that sound like fun? Somebody who just immediately said yes to that would be a huge red flag for somebody who wants to abuse you themselves. Plain and simple. Because you have had to expose to them that you are a vulnerable person without experience that has a history of abuse and is probably more likely to be abused again in the future because of you sort of, you know, if you haven't done a lot of work around that already and it's still a pretty raw open wound, like you're putting yourself in a high risk place. Like I don't think very many good people in the BDSM scene would be willing to just like without caveats of like, you're seeing a therapist, you've got these safety things in place, I'm not doing these specific things, you will not call me by their name, like unless they got some boundaries set there and they're keeping it really, really limited on purpose, you know, most good people are not going to want to leap into that in BDSM. Absolutely. All right. I don't know why I just did Jotuts. Okay. Let's get to some other questions, because we went on a whole thing, didn't we? Yep, starting off with MS2, been there, done that at 19, do not recommend. Yeah, you know what? People with personal experience are not recommending being in an MS relationship at 19. Can't say I'm surprised. Ooh, I made unicorn, rainbow, and star-shaped pasta mac and cheese tonight. Eating good. I love it, Dawn. That sounds great. Age of consent is like the minimum wage. We all know that some people would lower it if it was legal, but that doesn't make it morally right. True. True. Unicorn engagement can be safe if if it says fails, but I think it means falls. It falls in the realms of consensual, conscientious play. It can lead to a lot of learning, quote. Yeah, I mean, if it's like, but it's like the fact that it's a lot of new things at once, I think is kind of my issue with it is, yes, it can be healthy. It can be consensual. But when you're combining being in a triad for the first time and a first-time MS relationship, there's a lot of power at play there that makes the consensual part of that. And it just being a learning experience a little bit fraught, you know? Hi, Evie, my girlfriend who I've been dating for a few months. She's very submissive. I wanted to ask, as an inexperienced Dom, how I balance taking control with making sure negotiations are open. That is a great question, Ryan. I'm glad that you're being so mindful and thoughtful about this. I do have an older video where I've talked about how to navigate being newer dominant with more experienced submissive. So there are some tips in there for like scenes and like how to navigate that. Negotiations being more open. Negotiations being more open. I think what I would probably do is I would think about your partner kind of telling you what they would want to do, right? They want to try caning, they want to try flogging, they want to try spanking, they want to try bondage. And then kind of working on one skill at a time and not trying to overwhelm yourself with like a really complicated scene. And hopefully, because you're newer, they will understand that you're not able to provide that kind of like really complicated scene experience as of yet, though you obviously could in the future. And so that's like a good way of like, you can keep the negotiation open where they are the one as the submissive who is offering up like what kind of scenes they'd want to do with you. And then you tailor that based off of your experience and comfort level. Like they say, like they want to do a romantic bondage scene. You can do romantic probably, right? Like they've got that figured out. But how do you do the bondage part of it? And then it's up to you to figure out how to execute that. And you can go from there. So that allows it to be open where it's not just you kind of limiting yourself based on your existing skill set, so long as your partner is comfortable with you learning as you go along. And not everyone totally is. Like you might have to practice on yourself. You might have to take some classes first, but you can definitely build on that. Oh, okay. Chat scrolled down. I was looking for questions. I didn't see any. Okay. Okay. Let me find a question. Okay. Okay, I definitely lost some questions, and I do apologize. But you get to, oh my gosh, Bandita. Look at that little face. Look at the little face. She's a little lump. She's a little loaf. Look at the loaf. Look at it. Look at the loaf. So cute. All right. How do you know? Oh, that's such a good question. How do you know what your limits are when you're new to BDSM? So the answer is you don't really know for sure, but you probably have some ideas. So what I recommend for newer people who haven't tried BDSM before and don't know what they would like or dislike, I would go through something that's called a yes, no, maybe checklist. I have a really great one on my Patreon that is very, very detailed. It is, as far as I know, the longest and most comprehensive available yes, no, maybe checklist. It's like 5 or 7 pages or something. It's very long. You don't have to do that one. It's kind of overwhelming. It would involve a lot of It would involve a lot of Googling, I imagine. But you can find ones that are shorter and more broad, so it doesn't break down like bondage with chains, bondage with rope, bondage with zip ties. Like, it's just bondage. So I would go through like a kind of general middle of the road yes, no, maybe checklist. And as you're reading the list, like, kind of stop and think to yourself, like, is this something that I would enjoy? Because I would think about it like there's limits and then there's things that you would enjoy, right? So there's like something I like and it's not a limit. Something I don't like and is not a limit. Something that's a soft limit, something that's a hard limit, right? Because potentially you could like something and still have it be a soft limit or a hard limit, right? Because of maybe you know that it's not healthy for you to engage in. You don't have a partner to do it with that you can really trust. And so it's just better to kind of swear it off for now. Like, there could be other factors that kind of change, like, you know, something you like into being a hard limit. But I would think about it not just like limits, but also like things that you enjoy or don't enjoy. And I would say if you don't think you're going to enjoy it, have it be a soft limit for now. And then as you get more experience and as you see more things and try more things, then you can reevaluate as you go along. So I would look at that list and I would go, let me just pull one up and I can give you some examples kind of directly here. So let's see, baby Sam, let's know maybe checklist. Let's pull up an image here. All these text on these are so small. Oh, we got a super chat. Super chat alert. Super chat alert. Like, why can't I see where the super chat is? I heard it. Oh, here we go. Oh, Twixie, thank you. Oh my God, look at the little girl. She's so sweet. Little doggo. Okay, so, okay, here's one that's like, one's font size I can actually read just from a Google image. Okay, so there's like dominant desires, for example, has a yes, no, maybe checklist, and it goes yes, into, yes, willing, no, and then maybe. So, for example, one of the things they have on there is being bitten, bringing you back to a previous part of this conversation. You can think about and go, would I like being bitten? If I would like it, what would that look like? And then you can go, okay, yes, I'm willing to be bitten. And then you can put like notes beside that would say, I would enjoy being bitten romantically in a soft way. So just add some context for like when you would enjoy that. Or like blindfolds, and you think about that and you go, oh, well, I actually have like claustrophobia issues, so I'm gonna say maybe on that one because I could enjoy blindfolds, but because I know that I'm claustrophobic, it might also make me feel claustrophobic, but I won't know until I try it. And then maybe let's say caning, right? You think about caning, you go, oh no, that's way too intense. Like that's too much for me. I couldn't be into caning. And then you would say no, right? You'd say no, caning seems too intense, right? But just because you said no on that list doesn't mean that it's a no forever. I would think about like kind of your initial starting limits and your kind of yeses and nos as being the point that you begin with to kind of guide the things that you want to explore. Because the beginning, it's not really about knowing all of your limits. It's oh, little girl. Oh, thank you, Jay. Thank you. Thank you for the super chat. The sneezy girl. Why are you so sneezy? Why are you so sneezy, huh? Oh, I can't reach you. You're too far away. You're too far away. Anyways, I know. You just want to be pet so badly. You just want to be pet, but you gotta wait 10 more minutes. Can you wait that long? Can you wait 10 minutes? I hope so. Let's see the little tail going. All right. So the point is, when you're new, is you don't have to know all of your limits. You just have to know what you do actually want to try, and focus on trying the things that you like, and then communicating to your partner. It's opt out versus opt in negotiation is what it's called. And when you're doing, are you done, little girl? Okay, she's done. And when you're newer, the style you want to go for is these things are what I'm saying yes to. And I'm not saying yes to all these other things. I'm saying no to this because I don't know if I like them or not. I'm only saying yes for this. So only do the things that are yeses. And then the no's can be revisited at a later point when you have more experience. Does that make sense? And you'll figure out kind of more concretely what your limits are as you try more things. Question, I found videos of my ex online. Oh, God. She maintains they aren't her, but the uploader confirmed in DM she doesn't know that. I'm so torn because sorry, it's like there's a light like right. I can't see the letters. Because I find them so hot, but it means she lied. What do I do? Is this revenge porn? Okay, this is confusing. So you found videos of your ex online. She says they're not of her. The uploader said that they are because they confirmed over a direct message that they aren't. But it means that she lied to you? Is there a chance she doesn't know that they're online? And that it's like a revenge porn thing? And she doesn't realize that there's videos of her on the internet? Yeah, it means the partner could have lied. Yeah, exactly. Like, that's sort of my initial thought is like, just like because they're on the internet doesn't mean that she put them there on purpose and like lied about it. Now it could be that it's like professionally produced porn that is actually of her, and that she doesn't want you to know about it, and therefore she lied about it being on the internet. That's one thing, and I'm sure some of the more sexual members of the audience will probably disagree with this. But if you find porn of somebody that you know, especially an ex that is no longer with you, I don't know what obligation your ex, like if they're an ex, or like what obligation to you do they have? Like you are an ex, like you're not dating, unless you're friends, maybe you want to be able to maintain a friendship. But if they're your ex and you don't really talk, you're not in a relationship, you know, you're not friends or anything, like, dog being so excessive. She doesn't really have an obligation to you as far as like, you know, telling you about her porn career or whatever. It's amateur. And some of it was blindfolded. I mean, like, I don't know, but like there's still like a way for it to, like, it could have been any scenario where it was like the partner was just, oh, I'm just filming this for myself, right? And then they put it on the internet. Like just because it's amateur porn doesn't mean, I don't know, like without seeing the fucking video or like seeing the context of it, I can't, like, even then I couldn't necessarily tell if she actually knows that she's on the internet or not. Like, just like, it's, oh, we're still friends. Okay, well then she has a little bit of an obligation to you to not just lie to your face. But like, if you find videos of your ex online, you're not together sexually anymore, probably shouldn't jerk off to them even if you find them hot. There's tens of millions of hours of other pornography online. Do you really have to watch videos of your ex that probably doesn't? Because like, I see, unless you have a sexual relationship and you got friends with benefits going on or something, in which case this is a slightly different conversation. But breaking up is a revocation of sexual consent, in my opinion. And that includes, I think, unless you've talked about it otherwise, probably not jerking off to videos of them that you found online that you don't know if it's like consensual or not for it to be on there. She has every right to deny what she wants, but she has an ex. Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit different if you want to be able to maintain a friendship and, like, there has to be, like, trust and talking there. Like, because to me, I feel like the appeal of the porn in that case is, like, doing something behind your partner's back because then it feels more taboo. But I just don't know. I'm just not comfortable with that. I just don't, like, it's hard because she was my first love. Okay, well, like, if somebody you loved, is your love more important or a penis? Is the penis more important than the love? I mean, like, I get it's hard for you, and I'm sorry, but probably don't jerk off to your ex, porn of your ex if she doesn't want you to be doing that. I would expand Evie's answer to simply say jerking off to revenge porn at all, ever, probably not a good idea. Yeah, no. If it's revenge porn, for sure, definitely don't. But, like, you can't really know unless it's, like, unless there's, like, a little, like, hi, my name's blah, 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 and I'm here to film this porn. Like, if there's something that very clearly makes it known that she's aware that this is pornography going to the internet for mass consumption as opposed to, like, private personal use, then it's, you know, it's one thing. It's just weird. I don't know. I feel weird when people like keep. I feel weird when people like keep and like jerk off to like their exes and like they collect it. You know, it just seems to me that kind of seems like you're not really fully getting over the relationship. Because think about this like as from a you perspective. unless you are really good at having mental boundaries, and this especially if you were like in love with them, it is going to make it much more difficult for you to fully move on if you are thinking about them sexually and jerking off to them. Because you're reinforcing that sexual attraction, that sexual dynamic you had with them, and like reimagining it or remembering what you used to do together and how beautiful and amazing it was. And then you're not really fully letting go of the relationship and leaving room for yourself to move on and hopefully have other better relationships in the future. Yeah, exactly. Even if it doesn't bother you, it's not healthy for you, you should just click next and pass by for your own mental health. Yeah. Yeah, I just think this is like probably compromising your ability to move on. That's kind of the vibe I get. It just sounds like there's maybe some other things that have been in the chat I haven't seen yet. I would also say that her making videos had nothing to do with you, and you trying to make it about you because you discuss certain things and sex isn't healthy at all. Yes. Yeah. Somebody else's performance in porn or having relationships sexually with other human beings does not actually revolve around you, as it turns out. Bendita shake. What are you going to do now, little dog? What are you going to do now? What are you going to do now? Are you going to go lay down? Okay. Listen, I don't care what your ex said to you about what they feel obligated to do or not sexually with people. That's not really relevant to me. Oh, that's the wrong way. It's all about you, honestly. It's about you and your health and your well-being. I think, I imagine your therapist would probably agree it's probably better for you to let go of this and move on. If it was somebody you were currently with and dating and you found porn of them and you weren't sure whether or not it was consensual, that's different because you're currently in a relationship and then it becomes determining like, can you trust them? Is this true? Or do they not know that they have revenge porn of them on the internet? Neither one of those scenarios is good, and it has to be figured out. We had a touchdown in the dog bed. We did. That's exactly what happened. The doggo rocket launched and safely landed at its destination. All right, let's see. We have time for like maybe one more question. Let's go. Let's go. No, oh, oh God. Oh, saying something about that loud. Okay. Oh, yeah, I have new hair. Yeah, no, I did. I crimped my hair last night, so my hair is all like a bird's nest right now, but I love it. A beautiful, beautiful bird nest. Setting boundaries and what you communicate with mom is also a good idea. Example, what you're comfortable sharing versus what she's comfortable hearing. Yes, that's also very important. I should have articulated that. Okay, I'm promise I'm trying to find a question here, but we've had a lot of communication back and forth today in the chat, and I love it. Just looking for questions. Speaking as a pre-op trans woman, I don't understand the obsession with anal being mandatory with partners who have a vagina. I don't get it either, but I think that's a lot of it comes down to, at least from people I've talked to that are really into it, a lot of it's like a power and control thing and the taboo of it. Because even with vanilla men, a lot of their sexuality comes down to power and control over women. That's weird and probably worth observing, right? That's probably worth investigating slightly, why even vanilla men need to dominate their partners sexually in the bedroom. Can't imagine why that possibly is. Anyways. I did not skip your questions on purpose, Hellhound. I'm so sorry if I have. I don't see your questions. I'm so sorry. There's something about yogurt. The chat definitely went by really fast today because we had a lot of super chats. So I apologize. I didn't see your chat earlier. I'm trying to find it, but I'm scrolling as far as I can and I don't see any questions from you. I love your story covering videos. You do a great job of explaining IDK if you're even into it, but have you ever thought about doing true crime videos? I love true crime. Sorry, random question. I mean, I've thought about it before. There are certainly a lot of, like, I think the way that I've thought about doing it, and if I ever ended up doing it, this is the way I would do it, is there's a lot of true crime that gets connected to, not a lot. There's a couple of, like a handful of stories, like maybe 6. Of stories that involve BDSM elements, and a lot of people cover them from like, oh, BDSM is salacious and evil, and I think I would want to cover the story as a cautionary tale of like red flags around BDSM and like online BDSM relationships especially, and like how to keep yourself safe. Like it would be like it wouldn't be a victim blaming thing. It would be like a respectful, like here's how to do BDSM, and here's like the red flags. So we can see this is why this kind of thing is important safety wise. This is why we have certain standards and regulations. This is how to kind of do things in a safer way, and kind of also work on the stigma around BDSM and helping people understand that like, no, not everyone who's a dom wants to like murder you and put you in a barrel in the woods, like, you know, that. But I don't know, true crime is like, I feel like true crime's kind of on the way out. I'm not sure that it's a viable channel option at this point. Like if I started doing it, would it take off? Would it get a new audience? I don't know. I don't think it would probably end up being a big deal. Well, that being said, and that's all the time we have for tonight, guys. Thank you so much for being here. I will now retrieve the bandita. Bandita barita. Come here, honey. No, you don't want to get out of your bed. You're cozy. Okay, I'll come to you. I'll come sit with you. Hi. Hi, there you are. Hi, sweetie. Hi, girl. Hi, girl. Hi. Weren't you snuggled in our bed, huh? We're like, I don't want to get out. I don't want to. I don't want to. No. Oh, so sweet. Such a good girl. Okay, we gotta go say goodbye to the people. I gotta go say goodbye. Okay. All right, Bandita Pet. Good night, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm gonna go pet my dog more and have some food. And now she's out of her bed, so, you know, fat lot of good that did me. Anyways, we stream every Friday at 6. I make YouTube videos twice a week. Thank you all so much again for watching. I hope to see you all here again soon. And I will talk to you later. Bye.